We listen for words of baptism from Paul's letter to the Galatians. Each of you is a child of God because of your faith in Christ Jesus. All of you who have been baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female, for all of you are one in Christ Jesus.
And the reading from the book of Mark, chapter 1, verse 1. The event of Jesus the Christ is the beginning of a new creation. Jesus brings and leaves the good news of liberation for humanity's hopes and expectations, to alleviate poverty, to challenge empire and all legalism and power imbalances, and seeking to transform all forms of alienation and corruption. Continue to verse 9. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as he was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove on him. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my valued child, my beloved. With you I am well pleased."
Take a few steps beyond the iron fence to freedom and compassion. Which one am I working from? Can you hear me okay? A story of tragic confinement. Some years ago, a lion escaped from its cage in a travelling circus. The lion trainer couldn't find the creature, and people were terrified. They searched desperately, trying to find it before it hurt anyone, and before the evening darkness settled over the city. They even calculated how far a lion could travel and searched that radius of the city. But the lion was not to be found. And as the dawn of the next day gilded the sky, the lion was found only a couple of blocks away from where it had escaped. The lion was pacing back and forth in front of a wrought iron fence that appeared to be the bars of the cage. The circus and the city were relieved when they found the lion and returned it to its cage. What the lion hadn't found out is that a few steps beyond its pacing back and forth, the iron fence ended. Another step, maybe two, and the lion could have turned the corner and found new freedom in new territory. Pacing back and forth in domesticated unwildness. As human beings, we can also discover that our freedom may be domesticated at a personal, familial, communal, social, spiritual, and political level. That metaphorically, we may be pacing back and forth behind a narrow fence in domesticated unwildness. John O'Donoghue wrote, "On the outside, a person or a culture or a nation, as we know very well some nations can be, may seem to be contented and free, but their inner and outer landscape may be a secret prison." In her book, Intimate Revolt, the feminist Lacanian psychoanalyst and author Julia Kristeva informs us that Sigmund Freud identified that human beings really have very little freedom. That their inner being, their unconscious, their actions were shackled by civilization. In his book Civilization and Its Discontents, Freud suggested that natural human instincts, freedom, are captured and translated into language and serve the various institutions they inhabit: family, education, society, culture, and yes, religious institutions. O'Donoghue makes the same observation from a Christian Celtic spirituality perspective when he writes, "When our lives, minds and hearts are domesticated by the symbolic and cultural order around us, our lives are reduced. Our lives as free and equal children of the universe are disinherited. Almost without knowing," he continues, "we slip inside ready-made familial, social, cultural, national roles, routines and values. We acquire sets of convictions about ourselves, about each other, about maybe somebody who's different to us. We acquire sets of convictions in relation to politics, people, religion and work. Taking steps beyond the fences of domesticated unwildness. And I hold, and I hope you do too in this place, the hope of the postmodern notion that our identities are not fixed, that all forms of domestication and hobbling through our childhood and through our years can be identified and transformed over time. I hold that we can move beyond pacing back and forth, beyond repetition compulsion, beyond denial, beyond fear, anger, and a sense maybe of an inadequacy of ourselves and our identity. Beyond the symbolic iron fence of domestication and rigid socialisation. We can hold hope, we can hold belief that if we can summon the courage to overcome fear and take a step or two beyond our confined spaces, we can turn the corner and find new freedom, find new territory. And let me kind of leave this sort of thought as it came to me. As we have been invented without our awareness, from being a child onwards, school, think of school. Some of us used to get the cane, didn't we, Jolene? Terrible. As we have been invented mostly without awareness, so we can generously reinvent ourselves, particularly in a safe, loving community where power is shared equally. And this freedom into new territory can happen in individual therapy, in group therapy, in self-observation, in being open to say, well, why am I so irritated by that person? Because it's probably got something to do with me too. By being in a safe and loving community. And by re-entering powerful stories. And I know some of us love the biographies where we read biographies of people, and they so inspire us through their movement, through pain and suffering, and yet to still be people who stand up and can have courage. Re-entering a powerful story which assists us to form new, generous, loving, strong identifications. The radical new creation and freedom that baptism offers and suggests. And the story of Jesus the Christ is one such powerful, life-transforming story, if we read it properly and are shared it properly, a story of love, of justice, and life-giving spiritual relationship. In the very first words of Mark's Gospel, Mark informs us that the event of Jesus the Christ is a beginning of a new creation. A second creation, a new world. As the New Testament theologian Bill Loader notes, Jesus sees the heavens rent open. In Jesus, there is a meeting of the divine sphere and the human sphere. And into this mysterious intersection of the divine and human spheres, Mark shares. And just as Jesus was coming up out of the water of baptism, Jesus saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove on him. And a voice from heaven came and said, "You are my valued child, my beloved. With you I am well pleased." And in this place, we are informed that through Jesus, all of humanity is redefined as valued, beloved, with whom the divine source of life is well pleased, no matter who you are. We in this place announce that we are all valued. We are beloved. We are special. No one gives us this. No person, no family, no society, nation, or even our own self can take it from us. We did not have to earn this valuing belovedness. And as Rowan Williams wrote, God desires us as if we were God. And each of us are invited in faith to enter and live out this redefinition. Our baptism, for example, is one response to this invitation and a journey of transformation. And a few points in conclusion. Added to this, the meeting of the divine and human spheres invites us into a transformative journey to redefine ourselves, our communities, our world. Jesus brought in his time and lived the good news of liberation for humanity's hopes and expectations, to alleviate poverty, to challenge empire and all legalism and power imbalances, and seeking to transform all forms of alienation and corruption. In the event of the baptism of Jesus, a contrary truth and reality breaks into our world of our ready-made familial, socio-cultural, national roles, routines and values. And finally, to be a partner in this transformative journey, we are invited to engage in being transformed at all levels of life. You see, we start with being loved, and then we're invited to move on and become loved and lovable and work out those things that contradict this. So, as with Jesus after he is baptised in the story of Mark, Mark shares that the spirit of new creation takes Jesus away into the wilderness to address his temptations of his ego, social and cultural formation, and his power and powerlessness. For Lacanian psychoanalysis, the aim of psychoanalysis is to uncover what confines us, particularly the way in which our unconscious works to confine us, the known unknowns, or the unknown knowns, so as to set us free to be capable of love. This means, suggests Julia Kristeva, intimate revolt to enable us to identify how we've been captured and shackled by family, culture, our will to power in our false selves, and working through the structure of our inner life, our unconscious, by identifying how our society has and still continues to shackle us, and opening up our inner psychic space, our inner life, in the restructure and rebirth of our whole being. In terms of Christian spirituality, as I've shared a few weeks ago, to be free of the impulses of one's ego, Richard Rohr writes, we need to awaken our deepest selves. And we do this when we truly live and accept our reality. And this results, Rohr continues, in a stepping out into a transformative journey of death and rebirth, of letting things go and discovering new things, always forgiving ourselves and continuing. A journey which is the way of living in the divine presence, living in awareness of the presence. And baptism is one such step on the journey of transformation. We're going to pause for a minute or so of silence, and Ross will play for us quietly. What has touched you in these words? And I invite you to, in whatever way you do it, is to deeply accept your loveness and your value. You are valued and loved. So let's stay with that and receive the word of the story of Jesus that acknowledges that we are special, loved and valued.